It's time to talk about Las Vegas with Ira. Each week, Ira David Sternberg talks with the celebrities, entertainers, writers, and personalities who make Las Vegas the most exciting city in the world. And now, here's Ira.
Anything you want us to be, bring us your fantasy, LV.
Is the entertainment capital of the world, but there's even more here than meets the eye. In addition to the Strip and downtown, there are plenty of local places hosting entertainment and much more throughout the Las Vegas Valley. Finding out what's happening and where it can be a challenge, but a new website promises to change all that. TheList.Vegas was recently launched by my guest, Andrew Perali, who is a native Las Vegan and a longtime writer and editor here. For everything about The List, go to TheList.Vegas and follow them on Instagram. And Andrew, besides welcome to the show, can you change your name? It's hard to pronounce.
I'll get to work on that.
Okay. All right. The obvious question, why did you decide to launch TheList.Vegas?
Well, there's kind of two answers to that. And one requires me to kind of time travel back into time. And that has to do with how I came up in Las Vegas in terms of growing up here, both personally and professionally. And I became a journalist in the 90s, in the the sort of golden era of alternative weekly newspapers. And one thing I loved about the alt weeklies, like the Las Vegas New Times, Las Vegas City Life, the Las Vegas Mercury, rest in peace, all of those, the Las Vegas Weekly, was they always had those thick, meaty calendar sections where you can just find out everything that's going on any given weekend. And they were far from comprehensive, but it just reflected this vibrant cultural energy of the town. And so I've always missed that listing kind of service. Another sort of answer to that is after we were sort of coming out of lockdown and coming out of the worst of COVID, I was just hungry to get out again. And I missed being out and about, going to shows, going to art exhibits, going to plays, going to concerts. And so I was just going out a lot. And I thought, I wonder if I could create a calendar that's easy to read, that's simple to use for me. And I sort of created it as an experiment. And the List.Vegas kind of grew out of that because I thought, I bet other people would really enjoy this and would really appreciate it. And so that's sort of the superhero origin story of the List.Vegas.
Well, you referenced your earlier work, and Las Vegas, although it had a lot going on at the time, compared to now, where there's so much more, and the development of the arts district and just other venues and areas of the valley, as I mentioned in my opening. So now it's even more events and interesting things going on. I guess my thinking, this is just me thinking, if I were to launch this, it would, this is requiring a lot of work. So, that leaves me out. But Andrew, you've always been a hard worker. I'm probably the only one that remembers some of the publications you edited in the past because I've been around so long, but always enjoyed them. But it does require a lot of work. How did you set up the system so that you can accurately and comprehensively include not everything, because it's impossible for everything, but most things going on in Las Vegas, both for, I'll point out, locals and for visitors, because there's a lot of fascinating things, and I want to get into that with you. There's a lot of fascinating things for visitors to do that they may not be aware of, that are off the Strip or away from downtown Las Vegas.
Yeah, great question. So in the development of the List.Vegas, I was kind of at an advantage in that I was born and raised here, and my journalistic career kind of went through the arts and entertainment path. And I began as a music critic, a rock and roll critic specifically. And so I had always been in touch with what venues were hot and which ones were not, what was new, what was, closing. And so over the years, because I sort of, came through the cultural channel into journalism, I've kept in touch with, out of professional and personal interest, all the cool things that are going on, all the new venues, all the schedules. And so that's kind of one answer, is that I just sort of intuitively have a grasp. And the second answer is I have a lot of bookmarks on my web browser, and I'm surprised that my browser actually runs under the incredible weight of the bookmarks that I have freighted it with. And so the List.Vegas kind of works, based on that bookmark system. And then I have a few ways of automatically checking websites where I can quickly go and find items that I think would be of interest to our users, our readers. And also, I've got some great help. I recently was able to hire for the List.Vegas another curator, Ginger Muir, who is a longtime journalist here in the Valley, who knows her specialty areas. And yeah, so it is a lot of work, but it's also fun. And I've just every day when I get in front of my browser and I'm like, okay, I got to update the listings on the List.Vegas. I'm like excited to see what's going on because I find the coolest stuff, and I'm discovering new, wild, crazy things all the time about this, this vibrant, strange city that we live in.
Do you find you're getting, especially with the launch, do you find that you don't have any time to actually go to any of these events? Or
Well, actually, you know what it is? You're pretty close because you've heard of the phrase option paralysis, right?
right?
And my kind of rough goal for the List.Vegas is any given day of the week, I want to give readers 3 to 5 options of what they can do. And so that means we generally have about 300 listings active at any given time for the next, I'd say, 2 or 3 months. And yeah, so it's actually very, very difficult to choose sometimes, and I have to engage in high level negotiations with my girlfriend to determine what the weekend's festivities will be. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, or I can see you going out with her to an event and carrying your laptop with you and still working. And she turns to you and go, Andrew, stop.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's, you could say that I'm always working and that I'm going to these events and, documenting them or bookmarking them. But I love it so much. And, Vegas is my hometown. And so I'm always rooting for it. And I always enjoy, every event I go to, whether it's a, cool local theater production or a really cool band downtown. So, yeah.
Well, what's nice about it too is you also, in addition to listing events that may cost a couple of dollars for admission, there are also free events that go on as well that you have listed. So it's a nice mix, both for, again, the locals and for visitors who may want to see things that they normally don't see when they come to Las Vegas. We don't want to drain any money away from the stripper downtown, but still at the same time, it's a nice alternative way of looking at entertainment and fun and just lectures and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because that was a very perceptive comment, and that kind of gets to the sort of curatorial philosophy of the List.Vegas. And that is, our sort of core focus is the sort of what we traditionally conceive of as arts and culture. So local theater, local fine arts, ballet, classical music. So we try to be fairly comprehensive about that. And then sort of beyond that, the sort of broader entertainment realm, we get a bit more selective and find things that we feel like your intelligent and attuned person might be curious about. So that gets into rock and roll shows, the jazz and blues scene, which is really huge here. Electronic dance music events and things like that. And then another sort of element that feeds into our curatorial philosophy is, we kind of have a soft spot for the underdogs. And by that, I mean, venues and creators and promoters who might not have, the budget of a big box venue or a corporate promoter. So many events in Vegas, just sort of soak up so much headline space, because they've just got the promotional budgets for it. But there are so many cool shows that are free, that are community based, at your local library. The libraries are major, cultural, nodes in this town,
Right? They have a lot
or
of
community
programming and a
centers.
lot of the branches that people don't sometimes aren't aware of. And
Yeah,
it's a great
yeah. And
point.
so,
My one hope for you is that you don't get overly ambitious and start adding feature stories, and all of a sudden it starts to look like a typical publication, as you referenced earlier. I like the concept of very much, this is a very targeted website, and that's why it's called the List.Vegas. And that, in other words, you're going there to find out what's going on, and you can you can obviously filter it through various. In fact, talk a little bit about how you filter. I mean, there are shows that Ira likes, and you have that set up on the filter. I type in shows that Ira likes, and then there's a list about 3 things, and then for everybody else, there's 1,000 things. So now, how do you
Yeah.
I'm joking, obviously, but how do you filter?
Actually, you just gave me a great idea, and there's no reason why we couldn't have sort of guest lists where they say these are the events I like, and they're easily organized through that tab. So, hey, you may get I may be ringing you up for that idea. Yeah, and so the so we have a kind of a lot of fun, different ways of filtering and kind of organizing events. But first, I want to rewind quickly to your statement about the simplicity because I'm so glad you appreciate that because the design philosophy and the editorial philosophy is really focused on simplicity. And in the age where we rely on social media as almost kind of like public utilities, right? They kind of do everything for us. They, inform us about events. We get our news from there. We get our, personal relationships from there. And I wanted to create a space where, I could sort of control the experience and filter, things for readers in a sense of, curatorial, good faith. And so that means a lot that you said that because simplicity, I want to keep it simple and focused and, user driven, so to speak. As far as the other ways that we kind of like, filter and curate events, we have a lot of fun with. And one way we do that is through what we call hot lists. And all hot lists are events that are tied together through a season, a particular theme, a particular trend. So, for instance, right now we have a hot list that just focuses on events for Black History Month, which is coming up in February. And there are, community workshops, there are art exhibits, there are theater events focused on that. Another hot list we have is we call it Feel the Love. And we've got all kinds of Valentine's themed concerts, everything from Chopin concert at the Smith Center to a kind of down and dirty Valentine's themed burlesque show at the Mint Lounge. And so we try to cover it all. And then there we have this crazy electronic dance event that is an anti-Valentine's Day event going on as well at the Jackpot Bar and Grill. So that's kind of a fun way. And those are always, good points to check in, like, hey, what's going on with, what am I going to do for Valentine's Day? What am I going to do for Lunar New Year coming up? So the List.Vegas is a great place to just, check in on the front page and get your event info.
I want to point out too, because you're too modest to, Andrew, and that is you can actually support the website if you go to the List.Vegas and check out ways that you can support this endeavor. And because it's a lot of work, I'm telling you, that's why I couldn't do it, Andrew. I'm glad you're doing it. Not that you asked me to do it because I couldn't, but it's a lot of work. You have the background for it. You have also the focus for it, which is good because, as you mentioned, you have the hot list, but it's a very simple, or what is the word I'm searching for? It is simplicity in a very sophisticated way. I'll put it that way. So you're keeping it simple so that people can know what's going on. They can filter if they need to, and they're not distracted by 100 other things, which is so easy to do in today's society.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and yeah, the List.Vegas, we invite member support, and the website is free to use, and we also have a free weekly newsletter that users can sign up for. And I don't spam you. I just send out the newsletter. Oftentimes newsletters can be sort of like a sneaky backdoor for people to market you and advertise to you, and I don't want to abuse my users trust in that way. So we have the newsletter. So we have a voluntary kind of membership plan where you can $5 a month, and you get an added weekly column in the newsletter where I kind of go into depth about the historic context of a particular event that I highlight, and I find kind of crazy stories from recent Las Vegas history to tell from a kind of insider's perspective. And then you also get additional event alerts, and I'm also working on ticket discounts and things like that for members. And then also as we build out the site, we have other revenue streams that we want to develop to kind of diversify how we're making money, but while maintaining the simplicity and ease of use that is so important to me, because I'm a user of the site too, so it's got to remain useful to me.
Do you find that because you're at that stage where you're still setting things up, so you're constantly working, do you find that when you go to bed that you can't shut off your brain because you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to add this thing to the list? And so you have a little pad next to you and you write that down because you desperately need sleep. So you write it down and you say, I'll get to that tomorrow. I'm not getting out of the bed to put this into the system. I'm writing it down and I'll remember it tomorrow.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm sort of always working on this, and but it comes from a place of like weirdly obsessive enthusiasm, and I almost make it's almost like a game to me to just kind of have my brain around all the cool stuff that's going on, and then I've enlisted other people into this, this sort of mode, and they'll text me, and it's wonderful to have this network of sort of informal curators who will text me or message me and say, this is a cool event, it just needs to be on the list. And I love that because one person can't capture anything. And in our sort of world, plan for world domination, I would love to have curators who are specialized in different areas. So like Ginger Muir, for instance, she is my Henderson expert because she knows Henderson. She keeps track of like all the cool stuff going on at the Smith Center, and then she's our person who curates all the cool stuff at the libraries because the libraries are just doing so much. And my goal is to have independent curators who are the rock person, the person who really knows the coolest in jazz and blues, in local theater.
Right.
And that's the plan to kind of grow the site so we have these informed experts who are helping me curate this site for our readers.
I know it's early days, but have you heard from any people that don't live in Las Vegas yet that found the site before coming to Las Vegas and responded to you and said, hey, I just found this? Have you gotten any of those?
I haven't, but that's actually a really great question because my hope also, the site is, its stated purpose is, to be curated, for locals. But I also think there's sort of this added silver lining, and that is, it's anyone can visit the website, and I think it would be great if tourists stumble upon the site and discover a whole new side of Las Vegas that they would have never experienced if they would just, have stayed on the strip. And the strip, and we do list, stuff on the strip that is, we find interesting or fascinating or fun. But we're very, targeted with it. And so the strip has, it's a world of entertainment. But I think as our idea of tourism kind of expands, there are conversations we're having about cultural tourism, right? Recreational tourism that celebrates, Las Vegas's cultural treasures and our natural treasures.
I've talked with Marta at UNLV about that subject a couple of times on the show, and it's very important, cultural tourism. So I think that's a natural part of what your site can do is to connect people that way. So that's a great idea. Are you surprised, being a native Las Vegan and spending all these years here in Las Vegas, the way the town has grown, are you surprised that occasionally you don't know about an event or a venue that one of your friends or associates or associate curators find and let you know about? Are you surprised that there's still these things you don't know about or haven't found out about yet?
I am. I sort of am surprised, but not at the same time because, and I feel like Vegas right now, I think that there's this collective hunger to get out again and, interact with humans, participate in culture, see cool shows, catch live music. And every event I go to, there's this sense of, sort of relief, like, we're back to whatever the new normal is, right? But to your point, there's just like so much interesting stuff out there that there's also on the sort of supply side a lot of entrepreneurial energy right now, and new spots are popping up all the time. One that just popped up on my radar that opened recently is a jazz club called Max and Jazz, and they're a sushi restaurant that does jazz 7 nights a week. Amazing talent, 7 nights a week. And they just popped up like that on my radar one day and found out about them on Instagram. And I get really excited whenever I'm surprised like that, and to see, these new sort of blossomings of culture happening in the Valley.
I'm like you in that sense. I heard about Maxim Jazz and I haven't been there, but I'm always on the lookout for potential guests for the show. And so there's an example of another venue. And I'm like you, I have a bunch of bookmarks, not as many as you, but I have bookmarks for the various venues that I check and see who's going to be there a month from now and whether they'd make an interesting guest. And so it kind of works that way. I could see that. Do you think that, and this is definitely a great question for Andrew and for you, which you are Andrew. That is, I put you in the
Last time I checked.
yeah, put you in the third person for a second. Do you think you can compare Las Vegas and its size to with the number of events we currently have, not 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but today? Would you say we have more? I'll use the broad term events, but clearly that's entertainment, lectures, etc. Do you think we have more than a city that has the same comparable population?
I would actually have to research that to give you like a sort of serious answer. I can give you my sort of personal anecdotal answer,
I'll go
and
with
that
that.
is,
I'll go with that.
yeah, my purely unevidenced, unscientific answer is we have so much going on. I mean, it is, and so my feeling is that for a city of our size, especially given, and I also kind of factor in the 24-hour nature of Vegas, and that kind of is a blade that cuts both ways because it makes people unavailable at traditional times where you would expect, big crowds at things. And I guess my point is that for the amount of stuff going on, it really surprises me and heartens me and encourages me about the vibrant, cultural life and potential that there is in Vegas as we continue to grow. So my feeling is that there's no dearth of, fun, interesting, fascinating things to do.
From your perspective, again, as a native Las Vegan and also your background in journalism and in cultural reporting, what was the period for you that set off what we're currently at? In other words, was it the explosion of the arts district? Was it East Fremont or Fremont East? Was it something else? Was it the Smith Center? What was it that you realized that we were then at that point going to be expanding our, I'll use the term, cultural offerings?
Wow, that's actually a really interesting question, and I think you just sort of nailed down the premise for a fascinating book. So, and fortunately, I don't have a book-length answer for that, but I would say it's a number of things, and I think we'd have to actually go back to, the 90s, and when Oscar Goodman was, ringing the bell for downtown, and at the time, you know he was listened to, he was listened to with a certain amount of bemusement and amusement,
Right.
and
It
I
was
thought it
more,
was,
more that than skepticism. It was more bemusement. I think you're right.
yeah, and there are other factors that that created the blossoming downtown that we see. So I would say that he was one of the one of like the signal figures who helped start that conversation. I mean,
Yeah,
and I do want to say that the arts and culture scene in Vegas, predated sort of the official conversations about downtown. So I don't want to discount any of the hardworking gallerists and artists who've been on the ground, building this scene. So I think that really started it. And Tony Hsieh, as a complex figure, he's there are very polarized opinions about his sort of legacy in Las Vegas, but on balance, I mean, he brought a magnifying glass to, downtown Las Vegas, and he attracted capital. And I think that created, a momentum that we're still seeing. The advent of First Friday from, Cindy Funkhauser, who recently passed away. I mean, that was an ongoing event that would just, naturally focus attention on downtown and the art scene and the culture scene. So I think those are just three kind of factors in sort of like the capital D downtown as we know it.
Parallel question: what accounts for the explosion outside of downtown and the arts district, out in the suburbs, including, as you mentioned earlier, Henderson? You're seeing all these different venues and events pop up in areas you normally don't think about as being a focus for that. And the last, I would say, at least 5 to 10 years, you're seeing more and more of that. Is there a reason for that, based again on your unresearched, unauthorized answer, but probably fairly close to the mark?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make several anecdotal guesses.
There you go.
And I think there's like a number of things. And I feel like I feel like there is this sort of invisible audience of people who have moved to Las Vegas, and I think there are a lot of um, remote tech workers who work here in Las Vegas and are hungry for experiences, from their places of origin. Could be the Bay Area, could be back east. So I think they are fueling some of the demand for better dining options, quality entertainment, meaningful cultural experiences. And that's purely anecdotal, but I go on, on Reddit all the time and follow a lot of the conversations on some of the Vegas subreddits. And it seems to me that there is, almost sort of like this sort of silent market that is really kind of demanding those things. I think another factor is just experiential hunger after the worst of COVID. And my feeling is that people are getting out with a vengeance, in the best ways. And I think people's taste, both in terms of culinary appreciation and cultural appreciation, it just seems to be getting better. And we're a foodie town off the strip now.
Right.
And you can get a dining experience off the strip that is every bit as transcendent as you can get at a major resort. So that's kind of fun too.
Before I let you go, the future for the List.Vegas in two areas. One, are you developing an app that can be used for people who love apps? And then beyond the app, how do you see it down the road 2, 3, 4 years from now?
Yeah, so right now, the website is the app, and we have tried to create a mobile experience that is, just as good as if you had an app. My initial research into that finds that, there's sort of a bar to get people to download an app, but that is something I'm considering, just to give people more options to access it. But I'm confident that the mobile browser experience is, it's basically like using the app. But that is something that I do want to, definitely look into, especially because I want to go where people are using, using the resource, the List.Vegas.
Want to get more
Three,
access?
four, yeah. And years down the road, so in a way, I'm evolving this in real time, and the List.Vegas is still growing and changing. I think the core philosophy of simple listings that are curated by a human who lives here, who can be trusted to tell you what's good, that will never go away. But as we grow and I get feedback and users reach out and tell me about their experience, I'm very interested in being adaptable and being versatile. So it could be everything from I've thought about everything from, wow, what if we started hosting live meetups based around a membership model or something like that. What does the List.Vegas podcast look like, where I'm talking about the highlight events of that week, things like that. So sky's the limit, but I do want to stick to the core simplicity of the service, because that's the best way to serve readers in this market.
Well, that's a great way to leave it. My guest has been Andrew Corrali. He is founder and publisher of the List.Vegas. For everything about the List, you go to the List.Vegas, and you can follow them also on Instagram. Andrew, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Ira. I had a blast.
Me too. See you next time.
You've been listening to Talk About Las Vegas with Ira. Each week, Ira David Sternberg talks with the celebrities, entertainers, writers, and personalities who make Las Vegas the most exciting city in the world.
Las Vegas.